in the previous session, we evaluated our model. So we created a pipeline, or so far we've created a pipeline with a pre-processing step, a training step, or tuning, an evaluation step. So the next step is to register our model. Why do we need to register a model in the first place? Well, we have this concept or this idea that's called the model registry. And we talk more about the model registry as part of the live sessions. Let me show you here really quick what the model registry looks like. I'm gonna go here to SageMaker Studio, and there is a models section. I'm gonna click there. And inside the models section, you're gonna see a tab that's called model groups. And I have several groups here. We're gonna be adding models to these groups. But if I click on, let's say, basic penguins, which is the one that we're gonna be using today, you can see that I have several versions of the penguins model here in this model group. As you start creating models, you want to save a model with all of its information into the model registry. This will allow you to, number one, share models with different teams. So any team that wants to use my penguins model can come to the model registry, connect to it, get the latest version. You can also build workflows with your models. Like you can register a model instead of approving the model directly. You could register your model so somebody else has to approve it, and you create that workflow with a human in the middle for somebody to come and approve that. We're gonna see how to code that in a future session. You also have a way to roll back to a previous version of your model. So I can, let's say we deploy version 4 and we find a problem with version 4, we can just go back to version 3. You also get the ability to reproduce any model in the past. So I can go back to any model in the past and reproduce all of that because I tracked all of my code, I tracked all of my assets, I have them in a central location. So that's what the model registry will give us. As part of our pipeline, I want to add another step that after evaluating my model, I want to register my model. I want to put it in the model registry. So how do we do that? Let's go back to the code. By the way, this is what is going to happen now. I'm gonna grab the model from the training step, and I'm gonna grab the metrics that I generated on the evaluation step. As a reminder, the output from the evaluation step was what we call a property file, and it was the evaluation report. And if you remember, that evaluation report had the accuracy of the model inside. That's pretty important. Let's just take a quick look at that evaluation script. So I can show you, this is what that evaluation report looked like. See how I outputted metrics and inside the accuracy? Well, when I register my model, I want to add that information as metadata. So I want anybody to go to the model registry and see what the accuracy of my model was. So that's why you can see from this picture or on this picture that the inputs to the registration step will be the model that we need to register, the model assets, and the metrics that come from the evaluation step. Then the registration step is gonna take my model and create a new model version in the model registry. This is just gonna create a new version there in the model registry. Fortunately, SageMaker offers a special step to register a model. So let's see. The first thing that we need to determine is what is the model group that we're gonna create to save our model. So if you're working on any company that's using machine learning, you're very likely to have dozens of models, if not hundreds of models, okay? So it's gonna be a model for everything. So when you add models to the model registry, you want to organize them because even the version number depends on the model. So I'm gonna create the package group called basic penguins. That's the name that I created here. That's where we're gonna store our models. So after this, gonna run this, we need to define what our model will look like. What is the class that's gonna represent our model? Remember that the model that we created using the training step is a TensorFlow model. Fortunately, SageMaker gives me an out-of-the-box class to represent the TensorFlow model. Why do I need that? Well, because part of the information that SageMaker is going to store in the model registry is what is the container, the Docker container that we need to use to run that model. At the time of deploying that model, how are you going to deploy that model? Well, that information has to come from somewhere. SageMaker does that by, when we wrap our model into a class, we're telling SageMaker, this is the type of model, so please choose a container that supports this model. So we're gonna use this TensorFlow model wrapper or class from SageMaker to define our model. What information do we need? Well, the model assets. And remember in the previous session, we created this variable, and this variable points to either the training step model or the tuning step model if we're using tuning. So that's what this model assets is. And as a reminder, this is just an S3 URL, by the way. This is just an S3 URL pointing to the location of the package, that model.tar.gc file. Then we define what is the framework version for TensorFlow. This is going to be 1.12 because we defined that in our config. What is the session? This is just the pipeline session that we're using. And what is the role? So information that we always pass through all of these steps. This defines my model. Now we need to specify the metrics. So we are going to create the metrics that we are going to add to the model in the model registry. Here is how you do that. So I'm using the model metrics class that SageMaker provides. And I'm going to say, okay, I want to initialize model metrics. And there are a bunch of metrics. And as we move forward in the sessions, we're going to be adding more metrics here. For now, I'm just going to add the model statistics. These are statistics about my model. So I'm going to create model metrics, instantiate model statistics with metric source, which tells SageMaker that these metrics are coming from a source. Please go there and read the metrics. And as you can see here, I'm going to explain this bit by bit, but in summary, this is providing the URL of my evaluation.json file that comes or came out of my evaluation report. All of this mambo jambo that I have here, the only thing that does is just grabbing the S3 output of my evaluation report and putting it here. Now let's try to sort of like understand why it is complex. This is my evaluation output. If you remember, the evaluation output points to the folder. So that is what the output is going to be. So I'm getting that output from the evaluate model step. This is how I get that output. This is going to give me the S3 URI, but it does not point to the file though. It points to the folder, always points to the folder. Now I need to pass to the metric source a file, not a folder, but a file. So it reads the file and loads the metrics. So how do I do that? Well, I need to just concatenate the folder with the name of the file. But because I'm defining the pipeline here, I need to use a special function to do the concatenation. You cannot just do this plus, I wish, but you cannot do something like this. You cannot do that. It will not work. So in order to concatenate, when you're defining the pipeline, you can use the function join. So the function join, you're going to pass a bunch of values, and that function join will concatenate all of those values. Here I'm concatenating the path of the evaluation report with the name of the evaluation report file. But notice this file here that says, when you concatenate all of those, please use a slash to separate those. That's why I have this slash here. The result of this join is just the path to a file. It's a lot of complication just to do a simple thing, but we have to do that because this is part of the definition of the SageMaker pipeline. But anyway, the model statistics are coming from the S3 file that we generated in the evaluation report. Cool. The content type is just application JSON. We're telling SageMaker what is the format of that file. And that format is very important because we need it the way we created it, which is metrics, top level element, then the name of the metric, which in our case is accuracy, and then under that, a value property with the value. That is important, so SageMaker knows what to do with that. After defining the metrics, we are going to register the model. And for registering the model, I'm creating a function because as we make progress, I'm going to be reusing this function over and over and over again. So I'm going to create this create registration step function. And this is how you create a registration step. We are going to use a model step. That's the name of the step that SageMaker provides to register a model. You can use a model step in two variants: to register a model or to create a model if you want to execute something through it. We're gonna see that later. In this case, we are going to call the register function of the model that we created, and we're gonna pass the result to the step arguments of this model step. We're defining our model step. We're gonna call it register. And now let's see all of the properties. Sounds like a lot. It's not complicated. First, we need to define what is the group where we are going to register this model. And this is going to be the basic penguins. Second, what is the approval status? And as you can see, I'm getting the approval status from the parameters here. When I don't pass anything, I'm going to register a model automatically by saying the model is approved. Remember that I told you we can also register a model using pending manual approval. And in that case, somebody else will have to mark that model approved later on. That's for adding a human in the middle of a workflow. So by default, approval status is just going to be approved. Then I'm passing the model metrics. And by default, if nothing comes through, the model metrics are just going to be the ones that I just defined. There is a drift check baselines that we're going to use later down the line. We're going to be passing this information as well. Now I'm just going to ignore those. And as you can see, the default value is none. The content type is what is the content type that my model expects to run predictions. By default, the content type is going to be CSV. If I don't specify anything different, this model is going to expect CSV data as input. The response type, what is the type of prediction that is going to send me back? Is it going to be CSV? Is it going to be JSON? By default, it's going to be JSON. When I deploy this model, I'm saying by default, this model is going to send JSON back. After that, these two properties indicate what are the type of instances that I can use to run inference with this model or to run batch transform jobs with this model. And we're going to run a transform job later on, but basically this is informational. So anyone who looks at the model in the model registry, and we're going to see it in a few minutes, knows exactly what type of computing hardware is required to deploy this model. And what I'm doing here is I'm passing here, obviously it's an array because there might be more than one type of instance that you could use. What I'm passing here is that the ML M5 X large instance. That's what I'm passing here. I could be providing more. I'm just passing this one here. It's fine. Then the transform instance is going to tell us what type of instance do we need to run a transform job. When we run a transform job, you will see how that is going to become important. What is the framework version that this model represents? This is going to be the 1.12. What is the domain? These fields are information purposes only. And they're going to be helpful if we wanted to create a recommendation. We're going to talk about that in a second. But anyway, the domain is machine learning. This is a classification task. And the framework is going to be TensorFlow. I'm fixing all of those inside this function because I'm not changing those later on. So this is my create function, and I'm calling it here. I'm creating my register model step, calling my function, passing the TensorFlow model that I created before. That's the parameter, this one here, that I'm going to call register on that parameter. And the package group is going to be basic model step. And everything else is just going to be the default value. So this model is going to get registered with approved. This model is going to expect CSV data, and this model is going to provide back JSON data. And when we deploy that model, you'll see those becoming important. After registering my model, I just need to add the register step to my pipeline. So let's go to the pipeline. Now in my pipeline, I have the pre-process step, tuning or training, depending on which one you want to use, the evaluate model step, and then the register model step. That's it. This pipeline now, session 8, does not run locally because the registration does not run locally. So there is no way to register a model on your local computer. There is no simulation for the model registry. So we're going to have to run this in the cloud. If you try to run this pipeline locally, it's just going to fail. In order to do that, make sure that local mode is set to false, run your notebook, and then execute your pipeline. I already did that, so I'm going to show you the results. So if we go here and we go to pipelines, and then we open session 8, you are going to see here our pipeline. Let me make it a little bit bigger so you see all of the steps. So we have the pre-process data step. You already know what that does. We have the train model, the evaluate model, and we have a new step that's called register model. We call our step register, but SageMaker automatically adds this register model name to it or suffix to the step. In a future session, you're going to see why SageMaker does that. Now it's not that important, but here are our 4 steps. Again, if you hover over one of the steps, you can see the dependencies. Notice that the register model step depends on the train model, because we're using the model to register the model, and depends on the evaluate model because of the metrics. So when this runs, you can go to the model registry. Basic Penguins, that's the name of the group that we created. And you can find here the latest version that was created. In my case, it's version 4. The first time you run this, obviously, it's going to be version 1. Let's go inside version 4 of our model and see what's inside. You get a specific ID for this model, what's called an Amazon Resource Name, ARN. So this, if you wanted to do something with this model, and we will, you can use this identifier for the model. We get, let's see, performance of the model. You get here model quality tab, and you get the accuracy, 96%. This is the accuracy that we outputted from the evaluation step. So whatever we had in that evaluation report, that is what's gonna show here, because we're connecting that evaluation report through a model metrics to the registration of the model. What else can we see here? There is evaluations here, which is a different thing. This is for bias and for explainability. We're gonna talk a little bit more about those later. Associations, this is the training job that's associated with this. So it's registering here. So if we wanted to know this model, how it was trained, how do we see the logs that train this model? You get here the name of the training job that created this. This is the activity. In this case, it was just register as approved. If you change the status of a model, you can come here and see what activity, the activity of that. You get different tags assigned to this model, and you also get specific metadata assigned to this model. There is an assignment where I'm gonna ask you to add metadata to the model here. So if you want to add any properties and information, you can do that. Now you can also click on inference here. And when you click on inference, you can see that, look at this, real-time inference instance type. This is an ML-M5 X large. So anyone who comes here can see what the inference is, or if they want to run batch transformations, they can see what the batch transform is. That's it for this session. Hopefully this was helpful. In the next one, we're gonna extend the pipeline even more, and I'll see you in the next one.